Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from in the world. Welcome to Open Up, our live talk show. I'm RJ Horner, and I'm the host of Open Up. I'm also the vice president of Voice of Men 360. Let me share a brief introduction about Voice of Men 360, International Men's Day, and why this talk show, Open Up, is so important. Voice of Men 360 is a not for profit organization founded in 2020 based in Toronto, Canada. Many boys and men are seeking help and support in many other areas of their lives. We understand the demands and the support needed when it comes to boys and men in society. And Voice of Men 360 was created to step up and provide this need to help and support and guide our men and boys in overcoming their life's challenges. We're part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day has been serving for over 21 years so far and now represented in 90 countries around the world, doing various activities. International Men's Day also follows 6 pillars, which represent the overall well-being of men and boys, and we follow in those footsteps. So why is Open Up so important? Because men do not open our hearts and willing to share our matters. When we keep our emotional challenges within ourselves for any period of time, at some point it's bound to release and create unhealthy effects within us. That's why we want to create open spaces and allow individuals to share their life journey through our platform. We aim to create awareness about life's challenges, struggles, overcoming ups and downs that our men and boys go through. There are no limitations with gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. We want everybody to participate. Our goal is to make a positive impact on someone's life through this platform. Open Up is now on weekdays, Wednesdays at 6 p.m., and Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We bring individuals to share, let them share their experiences with you. Voice of Men 360. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith toward peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of the speakers and do not represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness to the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We're not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. So please welcome our guest today, Shyam Anandampillai. He's the creative arts therapist and a licensed psychotherapist with a postgraduate degree in drama therapy and couple and family therapy from Montreal. He has 7 years of experience working with individuals, couples, families, groups in the community and private settings dealing with mental health issues, as well as LGBTQ interests. He's currently working at McGill University, leading their Pride team for university students struggling with gender and sexuality issues. Please welcome Shyam Anandampillai to Open Up. Thank you for joining us and being willing to share your life journey with us today.
Thank you, RJ. Thank you, Voice of Men 360, Sivam. Thank you for the introduction. Very kind, very generous of you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And so we are about your life journey. We are about getting your experiences to help others out there. So let's take us back into how you became this person you are today, about your childhood. How was that for you, especially as it relates to your field of interest?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't sort of end up here. Like I didn't plan on ending up here, I guess. I grew up in India in a city called Bangalore. And through many happy accidents, some unhappy ones, and a sort of a midlife career change, I became a therapist after a few educational experiences, master's degrees, training, etc. But it's definitely not a straightforward route for anyone who's curious about it.
So okay, so you never had an interest in becoming a therapist. Let's take us back to life in India. Was it a happy childhood? Did you have friends and family? Get into a little bit of that, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So let me just to piggyback on the last statement. I didn't think I would ever become a therapist because I didn't know what therapists were growing up, or even in my 20s. I didn't really have a full understanding of the field itself. Going back to my childhood, I want to say it was a mixed bag. I grew up kind of in a joint family, which is not very uncommon in the South Asian context. A family with three generations, uh, sort of brothers, sisters, their families, sort of living together under the same roof. People coming in and out of your house. Very busy, kind of a sort of an environment. I'm the elder of the two. I'm the oldest of the two children in my family, and yeah, it was a typical loud, passionate. We sort of had very loud arguments, very loud conversations. Uh, I think as we may have experienced, South Asian men, uh, and and women, etc. We mostly express anger, excitement, frustration. These are things that are more acceptable in families, as opposed to, let's say, a man sitting down with sadness. Right? That was never something that I had the privilege of witnessing. So my father was either in sort of a hard work, just full on sort of working extra hours. This was the model he set for me. He was basically a workhorse and a perfectionist and never give up kind of a man. So this is what I grew up watching, and never see him sort of break down in a way that would make sense to me now, that okay, he's overwhelmed, or okay, he is he's burning out, or etc. Now I know that, but back then I just thought this is the way to do it. And so this was my childhood. So this, I also modeled myself after, trying to sort of always work, always sort of be busy, never kind of give up, never sort of like, settle for less. These were values that I sort of got early on. um, so so to sum up the question, I don't think I had a very fun childhood. They were fun in moments, but I think I was mostly focused on sort of doing the best I could, and kind of surviving the competition, surviving uh, the or getting the opportunities that I had to get. As you know, in India, the things are very competitive. Things are quite, there's few options, a few places, and there's a lot of people applying for those options, population, etc. So it was always that kind of survival hustle mode. And this is a kind of home that I grew up in also. We were all kind of in survival mode.
Okay, but you guys also had respect for one another. Like it wasn't a hostile environment, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I think there was a lot of respect for the elders. So I remember the story of when, like, my father in his late 30s got slapped by his mother in front of my mother, because he made a mistake, or he kind of spoke against her. So it was very clear who held the power in the house. It was my grandmother. It was a matriarchal home, even though the father was sort of the breadwinner. The female person, the grandmother, etc., they held the sort of the respect. um, and I think my parents respected each other a lot. I think there was a lot of mutual respect, a lot of love, but not the kind of love again that I know today as sort of a conventional love. It was more around respect, obligation, duty. Um, these were the things that sort of these were the ways in which I think they demonstrated love. Uh, Sort of having each other's back no matter what, sort of really having each other's back, not letting the other person fall apart even when things are really hard for themselves. So these were things that I witnessed growing up. And of course, there was respect towards um, the elders, whether it was my grandmother or other older people in the house. In that sense, it was quite traditional.
So then tell me a bit about your father, your relationship with your father. What, I mean, I'm sure you had respect for them, but was there bond there? What was that like?
Um, like this is a question that I've thought about a lot since. Um, so I lost my father in 2012, uh, and since then and even before that, I've been reflecting on this question of what was my relationship with my father, and I realized it was quite intimate, and not in a traditional sense of hugging or sort of playfulness or anything like that, but a very um, so I never wanted it to let him down. This was my big sort of life mantra, if you will, that I never want to disappoint my father. I never want him to be not proud of me. I never want him to, you know, uh, feel some sort of embarrassment or shame because of me. This was something very clear in my head from very early on, and I think I did everything to make sure that this was the case. Um, and from his side, I think he was very much. I know he was very proud of me, of my academic achievements, of my sort of playing the older son role, growing up, responsibility, not sort of slipping, not sort of, going astray from the rules of the house, norms of the house. Uh, Sort of, I stayed within the boundaries. I stayed very much within the boundaries. And I think that was something he appreciated. And the more he appreciated it, it reinforced me to do more. So it was sort of that kind of a cycle. Um, yeah,
Great. You know what? Again, all of our father-son relationships are different, right? Everyone is unique, so we have to appreciate them all in our own way. And I think your father had a great influence on you, by the sounds of it.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. I think he really inculcated the values that I still live by. With even though I'm not uh, in the profession that I started off with, I've done other things in the meantime. I still sort of go back to the things that he taught us around morals and values, about hard work, dedication, not settling for less, and never giving up. Sort of the perseverance was something that he put in me. It's like not giving up.
sure, absolutely. Thank you. So then you, at some point, immigrated. Your whole family, I guess, immigrated to Canada. At what age, and then what was that like for you at the time?
Actually, no, my family is still back in India.
Oh, so you came here
Yeah, so
yourself.
I actually left India to go to Texas first. So I left India in 2005 to go to Houston to study mechanical engineering, because I had a bachelor's in engineering and I got a master's in engineering in Houston. So I left, like many Indian kids do, to study abroad and get your engineering done, because engineering, medicine, these were the things that I knew about as feasible career choices for men
Right.
uh, at the time that I was in school. So I kind of followed that path, and it sort of led me to Houston, where I graduated, got a job, worked in the oil and gas industry for about 7 years. But in this whole time, I would keep going back to visit my family, because they are my, the root.
Mhm.
I would often go see them once a year. So I've been away from home for the last, whatever that is, 15, 16, 17 years.
Got you. I do know, and this is why I assumed you came to Canada. Is you're associated with McGill University in Canada, um, but so I just wanted to understand what was it like for you coming, facing the new country, the new world. Sounds like you were alone. Did you make friends? How did that work out for you?
Completely. Um, Such great questions. I think as a gay man, I realized very early on that because I didn't always have my family in my corner about this aspect of my life, which they are now. They've come around now, etc. But I had to, you have to choose friends carefully, because they become your family in a way. They become your support system. They become your chosen family, if you will. So I've been lucky enough to have wonderful friends throughout my life. People that I'm still close to, people from Houston, people from Canada, Montreal. So I went to Concordia University and McGill University to study. Um, so I've made wonderful friends from those educational places, but also just people from the gay community that I've met in Canada as well as in the US. And the South Asian community in Houston was something that really supported my nourishment socially, emotionally, spiritually, culturally. The South Asian community in Houston was a big influence for me, which is where I kind of developed my sense of the arts, and being free to do theater, being free to experience music, dance, things that I had not allowed myself to enjoy. I sort of started doing that through my friends in Houston. So the friends in my life have been quite a support system for me.
Absolutely. It sounds like you see it as a positive experience, but yet you came from India. Were you a gay? Did you realize you were a gay man at that point, if I may ask?
Sure. I think I knew very early on that I was gay. Um, I think perhaps in my single digit years, even, because you have a sense, people have a sense. Um, but obviously it wasn't something that I had ever voiced, ever explored in any real way. It just sort of was something that I kept buried. Um, Also that, you look at the men around you, the role models in your life, your father, your uncles, your professors, your teachers. You don't see gay people. Like, at least I didn't grow up seeing gay people around me. So you almost always feel like, okay, this, I don't want to deal with this right now, because it doesn't seem like a right place or the right time, or something that's not even right, maybe, because I've even had those moments of like, okay, is something wrong with me?
Right.
So I had the awareness, but it was only until I left India and started seeing people that were successful and gay, and holding important positions in life and doing wonderfully, having partnerships, having relationships, children even, is when I started to be a little bit more accepting of my own sexuality.
And so, I mean, I know now that you help others with their struggles that they face. If you might be willing to just maybe talk some of the struggles that you went through at the time of you coming out, and how life was like at that time.
Yeah. I think the struggles, the struggles are, they're internal struggles, and then there's struggles that you face in a day-to-day kind of a situation.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think I have struggled more with the inner demons, like inner sort of negative voices, negative the criticism, the judgment, the shame, etc., from having either, like, the very beginning of my life, the secret of doing something that nobody in my life was doing, nobody in my community was showing, and it was almost seen as a taboo. So even before you realize this about yourself, you know that this is wrong. So you grow up with this idea of internalized homophobia even before you know that it's okay to be gay. So you first realize that it's bad, and then you realize, oh, that's me though. And what do you do with that? So I think the struggles were more inner, as in overcoming that negative voice and sort of saying, no, no, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not I'm not defective. I'm not sort of broken. There's nothing, sort of, nothing needs changing or fixing, which was also something that was uh, talked about in my family when I came out. So the coming out was also sort of an interesting episode, because uh, my parents were obviously shocked. They were, I think there was disappointment. There was, I think they went through all the stages of grieving, right? The anger, the bargaining, the sort of sadness, the denial. I'm saying it in different or in
Yeah.
some order, but essentially the stages of grieving my family experienced. And it was doubly hard for them because they, up until that point, I had done everything by the book. I was an American engineer. I was making good money. I was ready to get into the arranged marriage sort of phase of my life. So this is when it was sort of a brakes, hitting the brakes of like, okay, so this is not going to happen for us, not going to happen for our son. So they had a whole sort of, I imagine, a mental process of coming to acceptance. So that had been challenging, and for me to face that or not face that was also challenging because I lived in the US at that time, so I kind of had this space buffer. I would sort of encounter it when I would see them. It was tense. I would say a good 5-6 years after I came out, things had been rough in the house. But I think I give a lot of credit to my family for finally sort of coming to my corner and seeing that this is who I am and um, this is what's best for me. This is what's going to make me the happiest. And at some point they had to kind of accept that. And I imagine that coming from a traditional South Indian family, um, this probably was not easy for them. I don't think this was easy for them at all. I mean, it wasn't easy for me, but I can imagine that it was much harder for them to sort of come to terms with it.
Absolutely. And you know what? I applaud you for your bravery. Nothing else can be done other than that. So now, do you help others to bridge that gap? I know you help others to deal with LGBTQ issues. In what way do you help others?
So professionally, so I have my professional interests. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a couple and family therapist. So in my professional capacity in the university and in the private practice setting, I see a lot of clients who might be people of color, might be racialized minorities and sexual gender minorities. So somehow I've sort of ended up in a practice that I see a lot of folks from the LGBTQI community. I think it is by design that I did want to give, sort of like you said, bridge the gap, make it easy. The one thing I do that in my work life. um, I also, uh, obviously in my personal life too, I have friends, I have, people, acquaintances that I have sort of helped do the same. But the one thing I've realized is it's something that they have to do themselves. It's a step that, they have to come to whenever they come to it. Coming out or uh, reaffirming or whatever it is that they are wanting to do with their gender sexuality is something that takes time, patience, and a lot of sort of mental planning, preparation, getting to that point. And it's usually never as sort of rosy or as, you know, uh, unmessy as we imagine. Usually it's messy. That's something to accept, that also is to be like, whenever we do this, when we do come out, just know that it won't be perfect. It won't be, it will be messy. It will have rough edges. You will have to deal with people's initial reactions. And this is specifically with people from South Asian communities, from, people of color, etc. This is where I find the challenge still exists, um, as opposed to maybe the broader Canadian communities, North American communities. Uh, it, we're still sort of in a little bit of a different space, even though people live in Canada. You're exposed to a lot of LGBT um, images, role models, people in power in politics, media. I think when it comes to families, people still hold a different value system, a different expectation for their children. Um, and this can be tough for the children who feel uh, that that vibe in the house, so it might be these are the people that I see mostly in practice uh, who might be comfortable with themselves and their friends, but when it comes to families, there is a bit of a block. There's a bit of a uh, hesitation, fear, uh, panic, etc.
Especially if they've never really had that open discussion back and forth with their parents. There's not
Yeah,
a sense of, oh, I saw this coming, right? You know, sometimes it's a shock of, oh wow, I didn't know, and
yeah.
then having to now suddenly deal with this, right?
Completely. I think that there is something to be said about that shock, that initial kind of reaction that comes out, because then when people have time to let that sink in, sort of see both sides of it, kind of get to a more comfortable place, I think things can be repaired. But the initial damage can happen when a child sort of comes out and gets an adverse reaction that can be a little bit damaging
Right.
for both parties, the parent who has that adverse reaction as well as the child who has to live with it, or the adolescent or teenager, whatever it is. So that's definitely a challenging aspect of coming out, or reaffirming oneself.
Absolutely. Especially you got to figure that your parents probably, like you mentioned earlier, have had a plan for you all their
Yeah,
life, right? All your life. They've seen it, they pictured
yeah.
it, how your life is going to go, whether that be university, the family, the kids, they've imagined this.
Grandkid, even grand.
Right. Exactly. And then when this doesn't happen, it destroys their dreams, so to speak.
Yeah,
And so there's truly, the LGBTQ person is going, wow, I needed my family at this point,
yeah,
and your family just thinks, oh my god, all my dreams are crushed. So there's
yeah,
totally opposite sides of the fence there that
yeah,
really have to be bonded somehow to move
yeah.
forward.
Completely. And
So
and
no,
another misconception. Sorry,
no, you please continue.
I find that another misconception that people, or young people, have to deal with is that the whether it's the LGBTQI folks, mostly, it's that it's not a South Asian thing. That this is a Western thing. Being a sexual minority or gender minority is not a South Asian thing. It's a Western thing, which is not true.
It's a global thing,
Yeah, it's a global thing. There's absolutely no connection to it being rooted in Canada or North America.
or
You
one
know,
culture or another.
exactly, completely. So I think we need to sort of uncouple that connection that gets made. Like, oh, you went to this high school, or oh, you have these friends, and that's an influence. That's why you also have this now. It's not like a disease you can catch. It's definitely not. There's no connection to, geographically or culturally speaking. It's not rooted in any particular place. So that's something also that it's a misconception that maybe some parents might need to examine. And the other aspects, when I was growing up, for sure, there were these other associations that were made, like gay men who disproportionately suffer from AIDS, for example. That somehow got coupled with it. So there was always this thing of like, oh my God, am I going to catch it someday because I'm gay? Again, that is something that we need to uncouple uh, from our thinking, mainstream thinking, that there's no connection, there's no correlation, and it's obviously safer sexual practices applies to everyone across the board. So things like this have to slowly be untangled from our mainstream thinking, from our conventional sort of thinking, so that the shock becomes less when the child or adolescent comes out. The shock is less because the parents aren't going in this direction of thought, that these are the catastrophic things that they think about. Bullying, etc., etc. Of course, those things have to be taken into account because there is a disproportionate link to adolescents and children coming out as gay or trans, and bullying. That's definitely an issue that needs to be tackled systemically. But it doesn't mean that not being that will is somehow the answer. It's not.
Absolutely. You can't help who you are. You've got to exist. I think we as a society need to learn how to be accepting of people of any kind of diversity, regardless of whether that be sexuality or whatever choices
It's a
we
Canadian
guess.
value. So it's one of the Canadian values.
It is one of the Canadian values that I wish we could share a little more with the world.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I always like to ask two questions to end off our show, but because of your expertise and who we have, I'm going to turn it to an LGBTQ angle. So, what can people, adolescent or they're coming out, what can they do to ease that journey or to help smooth the experience?
It's a great question, and I wish somebody had asked me this, or somebody was doing this kind of a program when I was an adolescent. Like, I
Thank you.
wish
Yes.
I'd heard this conversation somewhere. Um, so I think obviously every person's coming out and every person's journey is individual and different. Um, and people usually know, you know, deep down who they are and what they want. Um, but we all need someone supportive to have that first step. So usually, if people can't access therapy or some kind of a mental health professional in the early stages or in the stages when they feel very very alone, having a supportive friend, having someone who is uh, sort of an ally can be a very helpful first step. So coming out to family can be perhaps one of the later stages of coming out, because you want to have had some success in sort of coming out to different people in your life and feeling accepted, feeling supported. Like, I have all of these people in my corner, so even if my family has an adverse reaction, I can seek support in my support network. So that's
Yes.
a that's an important step, to have that, to build that support network, right? It can be, people nowadays have forums, that people go on different kinds of different pages, different chat groups, where they have that virtual community, or an actual physical community from school. People have groups in their, LGBTQ groups in their high schools or even in the community. Google can give those answers to us to see where they're located. So having that, doing that before coming out to a family member can be helpful. For example, this is something that I found has helped. But of course, even within, because every family is different, you could have a sibling or a mom or someone in the family who is pretty chill, and they can be your ally in this process. So having an ally is very, very, very important, I feel.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. That's exactly it. Again, I thank you for your experience as well. Because people need to hear these, like you mentioned earlier. So thank you for that. And then our final question: what can we as a society do to help people smooth that journey?
Um, I mean, I will sort of focus specifically on the South Asian, community
Sure, please.
slash men, etc. Right? First of all, I think South Asian men need to sort of talk about this. Let's say if an adolescent has come out to their family, the father has to meet other fathers who are fathers of, who have children who are gay, maybe,
Mhm.
to actually talk about this, to talk about what's going on for them, because it's usually people that are in the LGBTQ community. It's not that they only have these sort of preoccupations. It's usually the people in their life that they have to sort of deal with, or their reactions that they have to be prepared for. So I think if we can have South Asian men openly talk about their children that are gay or trans or bi or what have you, that can be a very, like, that can open up a lot, like, it can make things easy for their children to have these conversations with their parents. And I would even go as far as to say, why just about the coming out? It can be about anything adverse in your life.
Yes.
Have, so having South Asian men talk about difficult topics, adverse topics, topics that aren't conventional in general can be a good sort of foundation for these kind of conversations to happen. Like my child failed in high school because they were struggling, they were depressed. That can, those kind of conversations that are not easy to have those conversations so that you can build off of them and sort of really talk about uncomfortable topics, right? Because uncomfortable for them. So
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, again, you mentioned the differences between the South Asians or Western world, and we are a little more open in having general conversations, a little more difficult conversations, and perhaps that leads the way when difficult conversations like these ones have to be had.
I agree. I think there's definitely a little more awareness and sort of a head start in terms of having done this, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, to come to this point where things are a little bit more straightforward.
Right.
I think we, as South Asian men and South Asian families, have a little bit of a longer way to go, just
Right.
a little bit.
And you know what? Thank you again. We have programs like these now open up where people can come out and share their stories for others who are walking that path behind them.
Certainly. And I'm glad it exists.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for being one of those participants. These are not easy topics to talk about. So, and not everybody's willing to come out and share their personal life stories. So we thank you. We applaud you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for very thoughtful and, meaningful questions. Helped me really focus my thoughts too.
And that's what we do here. So again, that was Shyam Anandampillai. And again, I appreciate your courage, your willingness to come out and share your life struggles and challenges so that other men can have an easier journey. When people like yourself come forward and share their life experiences on platforms like ours, especially on social media, it gives people hope to someone out there to change their mindset and change their life in a positive direction.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's our goal here in Voice of Men 360. We want to bring individuals and allow them to share their life journey. We'll have an open conversation about men's problems and challenges and how we can help them. So in closing, we have a few live shows here in Voice of Men 360. The first that you've just participated in is called Open Up. We now host Wednesdays at 6 p.m. and Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Then we have Vili, which is a Tamil live talk show. That's on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. We host a monthly webinar the first Saturday of every month from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern. We bring expertise in organizations to discuss a particular topic each time. We also have a monthly show called The Unspoken Tears. That's the second Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where the focus is domestic violence against men, bullying, male sexual abuse, trauma, and human trafficking. We host panel discussions once a month in English and Tamil. So please look for more of that, where we bring people from different parts of the world and share their perspectives, thoughts, and experiences on particular topics. And then we turn all of our shows into podcast episodes. So please look for us on all of your favorite platforms, iPhone, Google Play, Spotify, and more. We also have a monthly men's groups. We actually have two monthly men's groups now. The first one is men's only. That is the third Tuesday of every month from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. through Zoom. The next one will be on July 20th at 6 p.m. Please, the link is available on our Facebook page and group. And then we have an Indigenous peer-to-peer support group, which we call Pass the Talking Stick, on the fourth Friday of every month. That's from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And the next one is on July 23rd at 6 p.m. There are no limitations with age, nationality, ethnic group, or gender. All walks of life are invited to participate in our show. You want to be a guest on our shows, or you're willing to be a part of our organization and help the men's issues and men's rights, please reach out to us directly or indirectly. We'd love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, NGOs, corporations, and more. Please reach out to us. Our phone number is 437-889-8329. Again, call us at 437-889-8329. 983-983-8329. You can email us at info@voiceofmen360.org, which makes our website voiceofmen360.org. You can find us on all social media platforms. Again, our moniker is Voice of Men 360, where you can find us on our Facebook page and group, Facebook.com/groups/Voice of Men 360, and as well on all of your favorite social media platforms: Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and more. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more of our YouTube channel. Again, we are Voice of Men 360. We want to reach out and help more people and continue the great work, and we welcome your support. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, I'm RJ Horner, Vice President for Voice of Men 360. Better days ahead.